Jinyoung is trying to play it cool while a girl calls him out for flirting. She pushes him into a corner, but he is clearly panicking on the inside. Trying to keep his composure, he reflects on some terrible childhood advice. His imaginary friend Jason once told him exactly how to handle women. The first rule was treating women like stones, which clearly failed him today. His second piece of advice was to never get his hopes up. That strategy is failing too because his heart is beating out of his chest. To make matters worse, he is now getting manhandled by some random muscular dude. It has been 5 years since he talked to a girl, so he is totally lost. Sitting there in defeat, he asks his coach for actual help on what to do. The coach insists that having a clear ultimate goal is the only way forward. When he treated women like stones, he was able to stay perfectly calm. This mindset kept him safe from ever feeling hurt by anyone. But now a girl has appeared who refuses to look like a stone. The coach points out that he has built up an immunity to normal faces. Jinyoung admits that sounds a bit harsh, but he knows the coach is right. If he keeps acting like this, he's going to end up alone again. The coach tells him the secret is just to keep his cool around her. Jinyoung takes that advice to heart as he prepares to face her again. Stealing his nerves, he turns his attention back toward the girl. Jinyoung's intense stare is not going unnoticed by the girls nearby. Jason is trying out a desensitization plan to get used to faces. Fixing that awkward expression is the next step for his training, so he forces a smile that looks more like a villain's grin. The target of his gaze catches the look immediately, and her friends are shocked that he actually acknowledged her presence. They start wondering if he knows he's being totally obvious, but he figures at this distance his creepy face does not matter much. Eventually deciding the whole thing is too weird, he turns away. The girl watches him leave, clearly thrown off by the interaction. Her friend identifies him as Jinyoung, a guy known for being popular, though apparently he has a reputation for ignoring everyone who tries talking. That total lack of interest in dating is his whole vibe. And ironically, that aloofness is exactly what draws the attention of others. The girls start theorizing why he might have been looking her way, but she brushes it off, trying to act like it is nothing. Flashbacks show their paths crossing outside of school hours, leaving her with a lingering thought that she cannot quite shake. She eventually tracks him down at his desk in the classroom and challenges the logic of his entire plan to his face. But the guy points out that staring constantly is not exactly charming. And honestly, he realizes that coming off as a stalker is worse, so his bro suggests a much less creepy alternative instead, like just getting her social media handle to avoid the awkwardness. The idea hits home, so he decides to just go for it. But asking in person is a whole other level of nerve-wracking, and he somehow manages to stutter out the request for her account. Luckily, she does not find it too weird and stops to help him. Giving him a green light, she takes the phone to link up, and he hands it over thinking he might actually pull this off. She starts typing away while he watches, hoping for the best, until she pauses and gives him a look of pure confusion, because the profile he just made is basically a digital ghost town, asking if he literally just created this account for her right now. And he tries to justify it, though it definitely looks suspicious. Suddenly, she bursts into laughter at the sheer effort he put in, realizing that he went to such extreme lengths just for this moment, while he stands there completely frozen trying to process the situation, and the reality of his own social blunder finally starts setting in, as she finds his lack of preparation absolutely hilarious to witness. The mustache-wearing guy is spiraling, convinced his social life is completely over. Jason just stammers, trying to explain that the interaction was a total accident, but she just laughs, clearly finding his awkward panic to be the best part. Finally calming down, she shifts the conversation to something way more direct, wanting to know if he's actually curious about having her contact information. Poor Jason freezes up behind his glasses, completely caught off guard by the question. He struggles to get a single word out as his brain tries to process. And she immediately breaks the tension by admitting it was all just a prank. Handing his phone back, she tells him to follow her account before walking away, leaving him standing there in the hallway, dazed by the interaction that just occurred. He keeps replaying the moment in his head, unable to shake the lingering confusion, even scolding himself to stop thinking about it, but the memory keeps looping. Meanwhile, the sun sets on the school building as the day finally draws quiet. Back in her room, she's lounging on her bed, scrolling through her own feed. She can't help but giggle at the situation, finding the whole thing pretty funny. Checking her notifications, she sees that Jinyoung actually liked her recent selfie. Far away in his own room, Jason tosses in bed, clearly unable to sleep. His phone screen lights up with a notification that she liked his post back. The digital connection is officially made, sending a little spark through the night. And the next day, a friend is already grilling him about whether he really asked for her Insta. Sukyoung is getting teased about that new account and the guy clearly being into her. But she decides to shift the conversation to something she has been wondering about lately. She asks if it is true he is usually totally uninterested in girls, and her friend confirms it. Apparently, he only acts like that around her, which leaves Sukyoung pretty stunned by the news. Her friend suggests a quick test to see if those rumors about his behavior are accurate. They head out to the hallway to put the theory to the ultimate test right now. Sukyoung takes a calculated dive right in the middle of the corridor to get his attention. She stays down on the floor and calls out that she is hurt, waiting for a reaction. Jinyoung stops and looks back, just watching her sit there with a blank expression on him. She keeps waiting for him to rush over and save the day like a total gentleman, and he finally walks over but just grabs her by the hoodie and pulls her up. Without saying a word, he just turns around and keeps walking down the hall like normal. Sukyoung is left completely baffled by his weirdly aggressive and indifferent reaction to her fall. Her friend loses it laughing at how he pulled her up just like a vegetable. Sukyoung cannot believe he treated her like a piece of cargo instead of a girl. The two of them head outside after that disaster of a social experiment in the hall. Jinyoung is still staring at his phone and admits he's confused by his own feelings. He gets startled when he looks up, clearly still not used to seeing her around constantly. Seeing her face feels new every single time, so he realizes he has a long way. His mentor steps in to point out that they need to find the real reason why. Wondering why she is the only person acting so strangely, he tries to piece his theories together before getting caught off guard, spotting his friend across the way. He realizes he is in trouble. Realizing she has noticed him standing there, he freezes up. And when she calls out his name, he almost jumps out of his skin, trying to regain his composure while his heart is still racing. He approaches to ask why she is just standing around, only to learn she is stuck because she lacks bus fare. He points out she could easily walk to her nearby apartment, but she hesitates, clearly having some sort of deeper explanation, mentioning that her chronic anemia makes the short walk difficult. So he offers his own money to cover her bus ride, which she immediately declines before suggesting he just walk her home instead, leaving him no choice but to follow as she leads the way, completely blindsided by how quickly the situation has spiraled out of control. He finds himself trapped in a long, one-sided conversation, listening to her ramble on about her friends and life. While he struggles to process a single word coming out of her mouth, she continues talking, completely unaware that he is totally zoned out, and he just walks along, internally spiraling over how awkward this is. It turns out this is not his first time dealing with a weirdly relatable crush. Back in the day, a girl shared his commute home every single afternoon. But their classmates quickly caught on, immediately assuming they were an item. They both panicked and denied it, though his crush clearly was not feeling the denial. She even doubled down, acting like the very idea was totally impossible. And just like that, she stopped walking home with him, leaving everything unsaid. Which is why he's currently sweating through his shirt, just wanting this to end. After all, Seonwoo is usually on the bus and he just wants to avoid more awkwardness. But suddenly he hears a struggle behind him, stopping him in his tracks. It is Sukyoung, collapsed on the pavement and looking like she ran a marathon. Rushing over to help, he immediately checks if she tripped or got hurt, only to find out it is just her chronic anemia kicking in on the steep hill, so she asks for a little help getting back on her feet. Taking it slow, he offers a hand to pull her up from the ground. She's still feeling pretty dizzy, but realizes she's suddenly holding his hand. And the realization hits her, leaving her a little breathless and flustered. Meanwhile, he's already moved on to the next problem without saying a word, because he just casually drags another girl up like she's a garden vegetable. The irony is not lost on Sukyoung, who cannot help but laugh at the display. She jokes about his lack of grace, leaving him completely confused about who she's talking to. Jinyoung tries to keep his cool, but he's clearly ready to call it a day. They finally part ways, and he's never been more relieved to see her head off. Walking away, he tells himself that the awkward encounter is officially behind him now. Breathing a sigh of relief, he assumes tomorrow will be a totally normal, drama-free day. He even hopes she manages to get her life together and fix her health issues. Strolling home in the sunset, he figures his overactive imagination can finally take a break, but that peace and quiet is cut short before he can even make it home. A sudden, familiar voice stops him right in his tracks and his heart sinks. Realizing he forgot something important, she rushes back just to catch him off guard. She calls out his name, causing him to jump out of his skin in surprise. Before he can even react, she's already back in his space, demanding his attention again. She makes it clear she's expecting to see him tomorrow, and she's not taking number exhausted from chasing him down. She's panting and clearly struggling to catch her breath. Meanwhile, an unexpected observer watches the whole scene, wondering what kind of mess this is. He can't help but be baffled by the weird expression Jinyoung is currently wearing. The poor guy is basically short-circuiting, totally overwhelmed by her sudden, frantic reappearance. She's still gasping for air, but that does not stop her from calling out for Seonwoo. Seeing her state, they tell her to just sit down and stop running around already. The very next day, she's back at it, practicing her kicks with some intense energy. But the real question is why Seonwoo is just sitting there shirtless while things get heated. Seonwoo is still trying to figure out why that girl appeared out of nowhere. Jason suggests the most obvious theory for why someone would show up like that, but he clearly is not buying the simple explanation being offered, questioning if there really is not anything else going on behind the scenes. The big guy just shrugs it off, sticking to his original story. Figuring it is time to bail, Seonwoo grabs his bag and heads for the door, stepping out into the hallway to leave all this behind for the day. And as he makes his way to school, his mind is clearly elsewhere, until he runs into his dad standing right in the living room, awkwardly offering a greeting while trying to slip past unnoticed. The old man asks if he has eaten, but breakfast is the last thing on his mind. Hearing about the kimchi stew, he promises to grab some later today. Dad is not letting him leave without at least acknowledging the meal, so with a quick goodbye, he finally manages to escape the house, taking a moment to process the weight of the morning's weirdness, wondering if Jason's theory about being fated to deal with this is actually true, accepting that he might just be stuck dealing with this mess forever, hoping against hope that the whole thing is just a massive misunderstanding. Suddenly stopping in his tracks when he hears someone call out his name, and finding the very girl he was just thinking about waiting for him. The girl immediately declares she's going to hit him. Seonwoo is just confused and asks her why. She claims to have spent all night practicing low kicks just to hurt him. He wonders about her claim of humiliation, having no clue what she is talking about. Regardless, she grabs him by the collar to drag him along. 3 low kicks is all she's offering as a generous punishment. Poor Seonwoo is still trying to figure out why he's being targeted. She doesn't hesitate, screaming an insult while launching a kick at his legs. Seonwoo panics and takes off running down the hallway. The girl isn't about to let him get away, bragging about her own speed. He glances back, feeling the pressure of the chase. She is gaining ground fast, closing the distance with every stride. To him, it literally feels like a massive boulder is rolling his way. Suddenly, she catches up and announces she has him cornered. A low kick is incoming, and he knows he is in trouble. The realization hits him just as the blow connects. Another student hears the commotion and steps out to investigate. She accidentally lands the kick on the innocent bystander instead. The poor girl who walked out is clearly shocked by the sudden assault, and the attacker looks just as surprised by her own mistake. A sudden ankle injury stops everything right in its tracks. Seonwoo hears the call and rushes over to help, but he loses his footing on the floor and goes down hard. Then a bystander accidentally sends him flying into a wall. The impact lands squarely on his face, leaving him with a broken nose. Now both of them are on the ground in total chaos. The girl who caused the mess can only apologize for the accidental wreck. Everything shifts to the quiet of the nurse's office, where the two of them are left to recover on the beds. Sukyoung is acting like her usual odd self, but Seonwoo insists he is fine. Left alone with her again, he starts questioning his own luck. Keeping his inner awkwardness in check is proving to be a real challenge. He just wants to survive this encounter without any more social disasters. Sukyoung rests on the bed, waiting for him to break the silence. Trying to act normal, she strikes up a conversation about the school menu. They talk about lunch options to keep the atmosphere from getting too tense. Casual small talk continues as she asks about his morning breakfast routine. She opens up about the awkwardness of being home with her father. Offering some polite advice, he suggests trying to bridge that gap with her dad. But the conversation reminds him of how complicated these social interactions really get. He finds himself reflecting on his very first words to Seonwoo. Back then, he had simply blurted out that she was really pretty, thinking it was just a nervous slip since he had not seen a girl in ages, but seeing her now, he realizes she is genuinely stunning. Seonwoo catches him staring and teasingly asks if she's too pretty for him. Naturally, he starts flustered, denying any weird intent while she laughs it off. Realizing she was just messing with him leaves him completely rattled. She continues the teasing, noting that he really is fun to mess with. Stuttering through his confusion, he asks what she even means by that. She explains that his panic makes him say the weirdest things. Brushing off his apology, she admits that he is actually cute. This blunt compliment leaves him stunned in silence, wondering if maybe Jason was right about her all along. Considering the possibility of why she's been acting so unusual lately, a certain someone suggests the most logical theory for her behavior, claiming that it is simply a case of love at first sight, insisting there really is not any other explanation for her actions, leaving the two of them alone in the quiet room as the school day continues on outside. But the romantic tension shifts as he moves on to a new lesson. Park Jinyeon demands accountability, but she's not letting him walk away just yet, giving him a fair warning before she lunges into action. And with a swift middle kick, she sends him crashing to the floor. Left completely bewildered, he can't help but wonder why his mind drifted there. Confused by the sudden fantasy, he questions how he could ever imagine love at first sight, while the girl he's obsessing over just walks away without a second glance, making it clear that his delusions are getting way out of hand, calling him a pathetic loser before disappearing from his sight. He snaps back to reality, jolting awake in his own bed, trying to convince himself it was just a weird nightmare. But his roommate is not buying it, noting how breathless he looks, sensing that the dream was actually about someone he despises, and pointing out that his old trauma with girls is clearly resurfacing, admitting he's been stuck in this recurring dream for a while now. So the roommate pushes him to explain this bizarre love theory, concluding that if it is not mutual, it is just a one-sided crush, basically telling him that the root of his problem is simple fear, and offering some classic advice about knowing your enemy to win every battle. So he realizes the solution is just to learn more about the girl he is fighting, finally accepting that he needs a better strategy to handle the situation. Seonwoo's friend arrives at class 25 looking for his contact, trying to calm his nerves as he steps inside the room, scanning the rows of desks for a familiar face but realizing Seonwoo is nowhere to be found. Suddenly someone taps him on the shoulder, and a guy named Jumin immediately claims the spot he's standing in. Awkwardly apologizing for the misunderstanding, he quickly moves aside to avoid any unnecessary drama. Meanwhile, a guy named Gun is watching from afar, clearly annoyed by the whole scene. Jumin turns the conversation to Seonwoo, asking if he knows her whereabouts, dismissively noting that this kind of thing happens all the time. He starts mocking the guys who fall for girls like that, leaving the visitor totally confused by his weird attitude. Gun is busy dealing with his own frustration while prepping his gear, but Jumin keeps pestering the guy for information on Seonwoo, mocking how she acts, and finally the visitor snaps back, telling him to stop badmouthing her. Jumin just laughs it off, claiming he's got it bad for her too. Then he demands the guy stand up for a moment to see something, making him groan at the sheer effort of it all. Jinyoung goes all out with a wild, flailing attack. He lands a direct hit on his target and follows it up with another solid strike, The guy does not even put up a fight. Suddenly, the class hears a commotion that sounds like slaughter. Xianwu walks in and spots both of them immediately. Jinyoung claims he's defending her honor against a pig, but she just laughs it off like it is nothing, leaving him totally confused about why he is even fighting. She casually explains they have been friends since they were kids. That news hits him like a brick wall, and the mood shifts as they head outside to talk. An apology is offered for the earlier beating, confirming their friendship has lasted since the age of 3. Jinyoung decides this is the perfect time to study Xianwu's appeal, but his friend quickly tells him to give up now because she is way too popular to ever notice him. Thousands of guys have tried and failed to get her attention. Jinyoung notes she has a massive social media following too, so they sit there wondering if anyone actually stands a chance. It's not about giving up, but rather a long history of growing pains. They've been attached at the hip since they were tiny kids. Going to the same schools meant they were basically inseparable through the years. But then middle school hit and things started getting a little tense. She started bossing him around, sending him off on snack runs like a servant. Clearly caught off guard by the sudden shift in her attitude, Jumin started noticing that something about Xianwu just felt fundamentally different. Her smiles did not hit the same way, leaving him with an uneasy gut feeling, and that weird vibe has stuck with him all the way to the present, which is exactly why he's telling his buddy to just let it go. A vague sense of unease that's hard to put into words. He's genuinely confused by this gut instinct he can't seem to shake off, though he tries to brush it off as just his friend's personal bias. Their conversation gets interrupted when they spot someone walking down the hall. It's Xianwu, and she's already calling out to them while walking with a friend. Caught in the act, he scrambles to come up with a decent lie, but his friend decides to just blurt out the truth without a second thought, leaving him absolutely mortified by the blunt honesty of the situation. The tension is palpable as they realize they've been completely busted, and there's no walking this one back now that they've been seen. Xianwu tries to come up with a quick lie to dodge the confrontation, but the guy he was trash-talking with just spills the beans immediately. Jinyoung is absolutely losing it at the sheer audacity of this situation, and there she is, totally unbothered, acting like the whole thing is hilarious. The other two are left scrambling in the hallway, completely caught off guard. Jinyoung does not let him off the hook, pressing for an explanation right away, while her friend finds the whole spectacle way too funny to take seriously. Xianwu is clearly done with his partner's incompetence and starts to snap, so he finally loses his cool and lunges right at the guy, putting his weight into it and slamming the pig-headed jerk to the floor. While some random guy with a toy gun just watches the chaos unfold, Jinyoung decides they've seen enough and drags her friend away from the mess. Leaving the drama behind, she brushes off the encounter like it's nothing. But Xianwu is still stewing in his own head as he walks home, frustrated that his attempt to learn about her just turned into a disaster, blaming that loudmouth idiot for making him look worse than he already did, until he hears his name called out from behind him in the street, and finds her standing there asking if he enjoyed gossiping about her. Xianwu jumps out of his skin, totally paralyzed by the sudden ambush, wondering how his day could possibly get any more complicated than this. Jinyoung can't help but laugh as the tension finally breaks. She's quick to clarify that she wasn't actually badmouthing him to Xianwu. Dismissing the whole misunderstanding, she insists there's no way she'd ever do that. Then she pivots, demanding he walk her home since she's flat broke again. Poor guy is already dreading the hike up that massive hill, though he admits it's a bit messy since they were talking behind her back. He agrees it's best to keep that little detail a secret for now. Letting out a frustrated sigh, he starts the long trek upward. Complaining about the incline, he watches her struggle with the steep climb, wondering if the slope is really as brutal as she's making it out to be. She explains her anemia makes the physical exertion way harder than it looks, so she comes up with a plan, asking him to push her from behind. Caught off guard by the request, he hesitates but agrees to help her out. Placing his hands on her back, they start moving up the path together. She asks if that's better, and he confirms it's making the climb easier. But then she starts giggling, claiming his touch is actually ticklish. Mentioning her sensitivity to back contact, she keeps laughing through the struggle. Suddenly the air gets awkward and he starts panicking over the physical contact. Getting lost in his own head, he cannot help but overthink the situation. Realizing they've gotten way too close, he starts to lose his cool completely. Still reeling from the piggyback, Jinyoung's mind wanders into a daydream. But Jason is not about to let that cheesy moment slide without some teasing. The guy does not even hold back, calling out the sweetness of his internal monologue. Jinyoung tries to brush it off, but his internal focus is already slipping away. Before he knows it, he gets way too carried away, pushing her around, causing a sudden, awkward collision that leaves them both completely flustered. Shaking off the embarrassment, he tries to act like nothing happened at all. Stopping to take in the scenery, he realizes this spot is actually pretty nice. Taking a moment to appreciate the view, he soaks in the neighborhood atmosphere. Suddenly spotting something new, he pauses to look closer at his surroundings. Realizing he's never been to this specific overlook, he shares his surprise, pointing out that a patient with anemia should not be trekking up here anyway. She apologizes for the exhaustion, but he is not really bothered by the hike. Taking a beat to process, he decides to let the fatigue go, admitting that since she brought him here, he'll let it slide this once. Watching her quietly, he cannot help but notice the vibe of the place. She notes how pretty the scenery is, unaware of his sudden internal shift. Sensing that something feels different, he stops to contemplate the strange energy, Remembering Jumin's cryptic warning about Xianwu, he tries to piece it all together, but watching her walk ahead, he decides that whatever is off can wait. Xianwu stops in his tracks as she calls out his name. Turning around to face her, he listens as she brings up Jumin. She admits they talked about him, leaving Xianwu completely confused. Trying to clear the air, she clarifies that it was not exactly badmouthing. The conversation had shifted to their childhood connection and her curiosity. Admitting that she just wanted to know more, she waits for his reaction. He listens as she explains how the talk spiraled out of her control. She insists she never intended to talk behind his back or cause issues. Keeping his composure, Xianwu takes a moment to process the explanation. He tells her he understands and not to worry about it anymore. She seems relieved to hear that and suggests they start heading back. As they part ways, she playfully checks if he is doing okay walking downhill. Waving goodbye, she heads off while Xianwu confirms he is totally fine. But as soon as she is gone, he sighs, clearly still feeling the tension. Jason pops up out of nowhere, having clearly been watching the whole interaction. Questioning if his honesty was really the best move, he calls Xianwu out. The older man suggests that sometimes it is better to just keep things quiet. Left alone with his thoughts, Xianwu wonders what she actually thinks of him. She walks away, leaving him to replay the entire conversation in his head, and he cannot stop focusing on her final admission about wanting to know him. It starts with her bringing up Jinyoung out of the blue. She notes how he can turn from normal to ugly in a heartbeat. After that confession, she just walks away like it's nothing, and she ends up collapsing on the street totally out of breath. Back in the day, their dynamic was basically just petty food theft. Now back at school, the day is moving along as usual. A guy with a mustache notices something strange going on. He tells Jinyoung it's time to get out and play some soccer. Friend suggests sweating it out to become more of a man, but Jinyoung does not even get a chance to answer properly, because he realizes his shoelace is completely undone, so he drops down right in the middle of the hallway to fix it, which immediately draws a sharp, annoyed comment from someone behind him. It turns out Hanjol was right on his tail and almost tripped. She is clearly not happy about his sudden decision to squat. Jinyoung barely has time to react before she gets in his space. She pushes his head down and tells him to keep his eyes averted. He's left confused, wondering why she's making such a big deal of it. Apparently she hates being looked at from below because it's not flattering, and she calls him a punk just for making things awkward. Hanjol tells him to stop acting like a zombie, but Jinyoung just takes the heat without saying a word. She keeps digging in, warning that anyone else would be dead for that. Because Jinyoung's been treating every girl like a stone wall to avoid getting hurt. This fear drove him to obsess over self-improvement and staying busy, pushing himself hard in the gym and hitting the books. And now he's out on the field showing off some serious soccer skills, landing a clean goal that has his whole class cheering him on. The guys are absolutely buzzing, fully hyped to crush their rivals in the next match, while Jinyoung keeps his head down and stays focused on the game. A few girls from the sidelines catch the scene, complaining about the sweat but keeping their eyes glued to the action, especially when they spot Jinyoung dominating on the pitch. The excitement is real as they start cheering for him from the stands, totally impressed by how much he stands out compared to everyone else. Jinyoung has definitely caught their attention because he looks cool playing and does not seem to care about the girls watching. Which just adds to that mysterious, detached vibe everyone is talking about. Even if it's a bit of a stretch to call him sexy, he's clearly making an impression that's hard to ignore. Jinyoung is still riding high after that unexpected moment with his classmate. She's clearly impressed even if she's playing it cool for now. The school day wraps up with everyone buzzing about the soccer match victory. Teammates are already looking forward to a rematch tomorrow, praising Jinyoung's skill. Soaked in sweat, he heads to the outdoor sink to cool off. Turning the handle, he prepares to wash away the day's fatigue. Someone catches him by surprise, interrupting his quick cleanup routine. It's the opposing goalkeeper, clearly still thinking about that final shot. He admits he did not expect anyone to get a goal past his defense. Jinyoung recognizes him as Jumin, the guy who played goalie today, but Jumin is feeling pretty salty about the whole experience. He starts ranting about the dark, unfair side of being a goalkeeper. According to him, the goalie always takes the fall when the team loses. He claims he blocked 10 shots but gets blamed for the one that slipped by. Taking it personally, he tells Jinyoung that's exactly why he does not like him. Jinyoung internally sighs, realizing the guy is starting his dramatic routine again. He decides to settle the score by splashing some water back at him. Announcing he has a present, he catches Jumin off guard. The cold water hits, leaving the goalie completely shocked by the sudden chill. Their playful back and forth continues, proving these two are definitely not done with each other. The two guys are still bickering, calling each other four eyes like it's actually an insult. Meanwhile, the girls spot the commotion and start trading barbs about who's chasing who. Wondering why the guys are screaming so loud, they decide to go get a closer look. And just like that, they're jogging over to see what kind of mess is unfolding now. As they approach, the guys are completely winded from their intense argument. One of them is complaining about feeling gross, soaked in sweat from the whole ordeal, suggesting he just wring out his shirt. The other guy gets totally fed up with the dramatics. He's so done that he threatens a beatdown right after school, even while stripping off his top. Right as he's changing, the girls finally arrive and call them out for missing the bell. But the sight of a shirtless guy stops them dead in their tracks. The girls are clearly caught off guard by the sudden display of muscle. Totally stunned into silence, they do not quite know where to look. Even the guy holding his shirt realizes he's got an audience. And while the girls are busy staring, he's just standing there like it's no big deal. Suddenly, Sunwoo shows up and the mood shifts from awkward to annoyed real quick. Sunwoo is clearly not happy to see the girls there and the feeling is mutual. He's left feeling completely exposed, regretting that his rival caught him half naked. Turning his frustration into action, he tackles the guy to settle the score. While they wrestle on the ground, the girls just watch, still trading petty insults. And the whole situation just leaves them shaking their heads at this endless chaos. The next day brings a soccer match that turns into a total reality check. Jin-young wins up for a powerful strike, putting everything he has into the shot, but Jumin is right there to shut him down with an easy, clean block. The absolute shock of the save leaves Jin-young completely stunned on the field. Teammates start cheering for Jumin, who is soaking up all the praise for the stop. The guy does not miss a chance to jab at Jin-young's struggling performance. Calling his kicks weak, he clearly enjoys watching our protagonist fall behind. An observer notes that he's just not in his element today, and Jin-young cannot disagree. With the first half finally over, he decides he desperately needs a breather. Walking off the field, he finds a spot to collapse and recover his energy. Plopping down on the bleachers, he sits there feeling completely drained and defeated. Just then, someone approaches and points out how exhausted he looks. It's Sunwoo, who catches him completely off guard while he is trying to rest. Seeing her suddenly appear makes him stumble over his own words. A startled noise escapes him as he realizes how close she is. Panic takes over as he frantically yells for her to get down immediately. Confused by his outburst, she just stares while he covers his face in embarrassment. He realizes the teacher was right about the angle from below being a bad idea. Seeing her standing right there makes the whole situation incredibly awkward for him. She demands to know why he's acting so weird, forcing him to sheepishly deflect the question. She drops a weird rumor about looking ugly from below, catching him off guard. Panicking, he immediately insists that is not the case at all. But then he fumbles his words and accidentally calls her even prettier instead. The realization of what he just said hits him like a freight train. She just leans back and soaks in the compliment with a teasing hum. Mortified, he starts mentally spiraling over his accidental slip of the tongue. Jason watches from the sidelines, calling him out for falling into her trap. Desperate for save, he asks Jason what he should do now. Jason just tells him to figure it out himself and leaves him hanging. Realizing there is no way to walk it back, he wallows in his own stupidity. Silence stretches between them while she waits for his next move. She keeps that same knowing look on her face, clearly enjoying the chaos. He finally tries to address the elephant in the room with a nervous edge, wondering if she's just going to let the comment slide without calling him out. She keeps the pressure on by acting like it was a totally normal remark. Then she doubles down by mentioning how other girls find him cool and sexy. This sends him into a full-blown defensive panic as he denies the claim. She just leans in closer, questioning his denial with a skeptical look. He's completely out of his depth as he tries to process her sudden shift. Asking her to clarify what she means, he waits for her to drop the hammer. She leaves him hanging for a second before dropping a heavy hint about exactly how she feels. Caught completely off guard by the sudden confession, he barely has time to process the look on her face. That distraction gets cut short when his teammates start calling him out, snapping him back to reality just as the second half begins. She cheers him on from the sidelines and he steps onto the field with a completely different mindset. Confiding in his teammate, he admits that his legs feel like lead, but as he starts moving, his body suddenly feels light as a feather. Watching from the sidelines, their coach notices the shift, and he clearly thinks he knows the real reason behind it. He points out that having her watching makes all the difference, despite his earlier warnings to keep his head in the game. It seems even he is starting to come around as Jin-young fires a perfect shot straight into the net. The goal sails right past the keeper, leaving his teammates stunned by the incredible play. He cannot help but laugh, finally feeling like he is actually in the game. Jumin's getting an earful for whatever mess he just caused. The girl clearly is not buying his excuses for even a second. A beautiful day outside is the only thing keeping the mood light. Back at school, the girls are already gossiping about who gets the lucky guy. But the real drama is brewing back at the house this morning. Jin-young walks in just as his parents are dealing with a scheduling nightmare. Turns out the family plans have officially hit a major snag. Dad's work schedule just torpedoed their weekend plans at the last second. Mom is not happy about wasting those tickets, but Dad is stuck in a corner. Trying to dodge the tension, Jin-young just wants to head out for school. Mom is not letting him leave without a proper meal even if he is rushing. He stops in his tracks, finally admitting he is actually starving. Sharing a quiet breakfast with Dad still feels a bit awkward for him. Meanwhile, Jason is living the good life and eating well for once. Mom suddenly remembers she scored some surprise tickets from the neighbor. She hands them over, hoping the kid can still make use of them. With Dad sidelined by work, those tickets are suddenly burning a hole in his pocket. Holding 2 tickets for a play leaves him in a pretty tough spot. The big question is exactly who he's supposed to take with him now. And just like that, the perfect candidate shows up to solve his problem. Our guy tries to bail on the club outing, claiming he has other business. But he quickly realizes that the theater club just is not his speed anyway, and he hits a bit of a conversational wall with his buddy. Thinking he has him pegged as an anime fan, he tries to pivot the topic, only to get shut down immediately since his friend does not watch that stuff at all. Watching his buddy walk away to find snacks leaves him feeling pretty confused, questioning why his brain jumped straight to that stereotype in the first place. But he does not have much time to dwell on it before Jason calls him out. And since all his other plans fell through, he is left completely hanging. Laughing off the awkwardness, he realizes he is genuinely running out of options. Jason is not letting him off the hook, demanding he just be honest for once, calling him out on his obvious crush on Sunwoo, which catches him off guard, pointing out how he went from being terrified of her to being totally obsessed, and insisting that it is finally time for him to make a real choice. Suddenly, he gets interrupted by a familiar voice calling his name from behind, catching him completely off balance as he realizes his teacher has been watching. Stumbling through an excuse about talking to himself, he tries to play it cool, but Ms. Hanjol hits him with a question that feels a little too observant, wondering how in the world she managed to read his mind so easily. And leaving him standing there while she walks off with a lingering look, Hanjol brings up the girl he wants to take to a play, but quickly pivots to asking if she is the popular girl named Sunwoo. Jinyoung panics, wondering how she possibly found out about that, so she teases him by quoting his own awkward pickup lines back, before cutting the chatter to get straight to the point, pointing out that he is clearly terrified of getting turned down. And he cannot even deny how embarrassing the whole situation feels. She reminds him that asking her out publicly is a huge deal, essentially amounting to a full-blown confession of his feelings, and after calling him a coward, she gets up to leave, telling him that one day he'll actually thank her for this, suddenly calling out for Sunwoo as she walks away, while pointing out that Jinyoung has something important to tell her, leaving our guy absolutely spiraling as Sunwoo walks right up to him. Hanjol does not waste a second and tells her about the play, while the girls nearby start laughing at his blatant cowardice, and she forces him to face the music by telling him to talk, leaving Jinyoung with absolutely no way to back out now, realizing that he's basically just been forced into a date, as the invitation hangs in the air for Sunwoo to answer. Sunwoo cuts right to the chase with a direct invite, leaving our guy completely stunned by the sudden turn of events. Stuttering for a moment, he tries to process the question, but ends up just agreeing before he can really think it through. Now Jason is calling him out for being a total pushover, pointing out that agreeing to hang out is not exactly a solid strategy. Our protagonist tries to deflect by worrying about his new contacts, but his friend is not interested in his fashion choices right now. The conversation shifts to the real problem, his complicated feelings for her. And Jason demands he finally make a decision about his future. It's clear he's harboring some serious romantic interest in Sunwoo, even if she only sees their weekend plan as a simple outing. Jason notes that for anyone else this would be no big deal, but his paralyzing fear of rejection keeps him stuck in the past. Letting go of those feelings seems like the only way to stay safe, yet he has no idea how to actually turn those emotions off. The realization hits him hard that he has been here before, constantly retreating into his own shell to avoid getting hurt again. His friend presses him to finally face the music, warning that choosing to avoid rejection means losing his chance entirely. Jinyoung is getting a push to finally step out of his comfort zone, overcoming the trauma that keeps him from opening up, and his bro is offering to help him push past those walls. That means putting his complicated theory into practice right now. It's time for him to make a choice about his future. He's looking back at those childhood memories of getting turned down, reflecting on how painful that rejection felt back in the day. To cope, he developed a weird mental trick to stay protected, where he pretends that every girl he meets is just a stone. It is a way to keep his heart from getting involved with anyone, because he'd rather stay distant than risk feeling that sting again. His friends are pushing him to quit the act and grow up, so he's trying to play it cool while out on this outing. She notices him trying to act all sophisticated with his drink, but he's just fumbling to explain that it was the cheapest option. They've got plenty of time to kill before the play starts, so he takes a sip to hide his nerves during the conversation. Deep down, he's still wrestling with that stone-cold philosophy, hoping that if he views her as nothing more than a rock, he might finally be able to face his fear of rejection head-on. Jinyoung has spent years training himself to view every girl as a literal rock, but that mental defense crumbles instantly when his date catches him spacing out. His excuse about the bitter coffee does not fly for even a second. She calls him out on his obvious lack of focus. Apologizing only makes him realize how much effort she put into today's appearance. 2 full hours of getting ready just to spend the day with him. From the outfit to the makeup, she really went all out. Hearing that, Jinyoung realizes how rude his daydreaming actually was. She demands his full attention, and honestly, who could blame her? Feeling the weight of his mistake, he sinks into his seat. Luckily, she's willing to let it slide just this once. Shifting gears, they decide it's time to actually get the date moving. For now, he's determined to stop overthinking and just enjoy the moment with Sunwoo. They end up at a stage play where the dialogue is bizarrely literal. The dramatic Romeo and Juliet spoof takes a weirdly practical turn. Listening to the characters bicker makes the date feel even more surreal. While the theater crowd is bored, Jinyoung and Sunwoo cannot help but laugh. Moving to the arcade, they spot a prize they both want. Jinyoung starts burning through cash trying to win the plushie for her. And even if his singing is a total disaster, it's definitely a memorable date. Dinner ends with her kindly offering to cut up his dessert, and the walk back home turns into a casual chat about their mutual friends. Their conversation keeps flowing naturally as they stroll down the quiet street, but the evening finally winds down once they reach her neighborhood. Taking a breath, she mentions how much she actually enjoyed the outing, so he walks her all the way to her front door to say goodbye. Parting ways feels like the right moment, but she lingers for a second, looking back at him as if she's waiting for something more, and noticing her hesitation, he starts to panic while trying to gather his thoughts. Stumbling over his words, he tries to express how great the day was, but instead of being smooth, he keeps his real feelings locked inside, failing to ask her out again like he actually wanted to do. She gives him a confused look when he just trails off mid-sentence. And in a total social blunder, he lets out an awkward, nervous laugh, quickly blurting out a weird goodbye that leaves them both completely baffled. He bolts away from the scene as fast as he possibly can, stopping just a few steps later to realize how badly he fumbled it, kicking himself for being such a coward when the moment was perfect, because he really wanted to tell her how much he loves spending time together, yet his fear of rejection keeps him walking away with nothing said at all. The mere thought of her potential reaction is enough to keep Jinyoung paralyzed. He convinces himself that keeping his distance is the only way to stay safe. Plus, the date was not even his idea since Ms. Hanjol pulled all the strings. He worries she only showed up out of obligation, just like years ago, and now she's actively trying to train herself to view him as nothing more than a stone. Jinyoung is set on distancing himself before their relationship develops any further. Suddenly, she calls out to him with a piece of advice about his drink order. Caught off guard, he turns around to see what she wants. She stands there under the night sky waiting for him to notice her, recommending a chocolate latte instead of that bitter espresso he keeps choosing. Jinyoung can only stare back, completely stunned by the casual interaction. But then his internal monologue takes a sharp turn as a familiar face appears. Jason calls him out on his pathetic attempt to suppress his true feelings. He tells the kid that running away is just a repeat of his past mistakes, accusing him of hiding from the truth just like he did 5 years ago. Jinyoung cannot help but question how he's being perceived in this moment, and Jason does not hold back, pushing him to face reality, reminding him how he had someone else set up the date for him. He brings up how Jinyoung sat there distracted while she cut his pork cutlet for him, ultimately proving that his fear is the only thing keeping him from actually asking her out. The big guy keeps pushing, calling out his friend's tendency to run away from feelings, claiming he's basically trying to turn his romantic interest into nothing but cold stone, and though he admits that sounded a bit harsh, he insists he is just stating facts. Sighing at his own bluntness, he finally just calls the kid a total loser. Back in reality, the tension is thick as Sunwoo finds himself holding her hand, a quick, quiet connection that seems to catch both of them off guard. Breaking the silence, he calls her name, looking like he is about to confess something. She looks up in confusion, only for him to immediately blurt out an apology, promising to take her somewhere way better next time since this date was clearly a dud, admitting he noticed she fell asleep because the place they picked was just too boring. She stares back, processing the sudden shift in his demeanor after their awkward hand-holding. Then she breaks into a laugh, clearly finding the whole situation endearing instead of annoying, telling him she was actually waiting for him to finally say something like that. The mood settles down with them just standing there on the quiet street together. But then their hands lock together again, shifting the energy between them once more. He jumps slightly, startled by the sudden physical contact, and pulls back in a panic, apologizing profusely for grabbing her hand without even thinking it through. She just tells him to relax and reminds him to make sure the next date is better. They part ways with a quick wave, heading home after an eventful night out. And watching her walk away, he finally lets himself breathe a little easier. It's time to move on from those lingering thoughts and focus on what needs to happen next. Because a fresh start is exactly what he needs. The next morning rolls around and brings a new resolve. Park Jinyoung hits the outdoor gym to clear his head, grinding through pull-ups because physical exhaustion is his favorite coping mechanism. Yesterday's promise to Sunwoo still echoes in his mind, fueling a newfound determination to finally overcome his fear of rejection. Jason offers some unsolicited support, but Jinyoung is not feeling nearly that confident. He's deep in his own head until a sudden voice interrupts, and the painful strain of his workout makes him jump out of his skin. It turns out to be Sukyoung just casually popping up out of nowhere. Her sudden appearance completely ruins his focus and sends him into a panic. The girl looks far too relaxed for someone who just scared the life out of him. She's clearly amused by the coincidence of finding him here, leaving him totally caught off guard by her bright energy. Though she's Sunwoo's friend, her playful attitude is a complete curveball. Sukyoung insists he get back to those pull-ups immediately, and he just goes along with it, still reeling from the surprise. But then she lets out a massive scream that echoes across the entire park, and she immediately kicks the bar to stop his intense workout. He goes tumbling to the ground, completely caught off guard by the impact. Rubbing his head, the poor guy wonders what just hit him. She lectures him about his terrible form and how he's wrecking his joints. Before he can argue, she orders him to wait right there while she changes. He tries to protest that he still has sets left, but she ignores him. Shutting down any further debate, she leaves him alone in the park. Left behind, he's totally confused by her sudden mood shift. Just then, his trainer pops up to remind him this is actually an opportunity. The coach explains that now is the perfect time to gather more intelligence. They recall how their last intel came from that guy who's definitely not thin. Getting close to her is the new mission despite his previous struggles. He realizes the plan is to just act natural and start a conversation. Agreeing that anything is better than dealing with that other source, he waits. Before long, she strolls back out to the training area. He points out her wardrobe change, wondering if she's planning on starting a fight. She brushes off his weird comment about her looking like a rock. Shaking it off, he finally asks her to demonstrate a proper pull-up. He takes the chance to pivot the conversation toward her connection with Sunwoo. Realizing exactly what he's doing, she gives him a knowing, suspicious look. Calling him out, she point-blank asks if he's into Sunwoo. Flustered, the guy stammers through a weak, unconvincing denial. She does not buy it for a second, claiming even the local livestock knows he's obsessed. Pointing to a random passing chicken for emphasis, she insists his crush is painfully obvious. Shifting topics, the kid admits he's worried about Sunwoo's popularity making things difficult. She agrees but notes there's something else going on with her. Keeping it vague, she describes Sunwoo as being strangely mysterious. Everyone at school thinks she's friendly, but that's only half the story. Even though they spend all their time together, the dynamic is off. She admits that despite their constant chatting, she still cannot read her. Walls go up the moment things get personal, shutting down any real talk. It feels like there are layers of secrets being kept hidden. Despite being her closest friend, she warns him that he's headed for heartbreak. Left with that cryptic advice, he wonders if he's missing something major. Before he can process it, she snaps him out of his trance. A swift kick to his side forces him to focus on the workout. Mid-pain, he questions why he's being dragged through this physical torture. She calls out his lack of athleticism, clearly doubting his capabilities. Insulted by the critique, he decides it's time to prove his worth. Setting aside his casual demeanor, he prepares to show her exactly how athletic he is. She playfully warns him not to fall for her charms, but our guy is clearly not catching the vibe at all. And she just stands there, totally bewildered by his lack of reaction. He tries to play it cool, acting like he's just focused on the task. Meanwhile, a new student walks onto the scene near the practice area. Carrying her things, she heads straight toward the group working out. She catches the eye of the others as she approaches the bar, and she immediately starts dropping some spicy gossip to the group, asking if they've noticed the PE teacher's secret charm. They debate his age, but she's convinced he's definitely got that mature appeal, bringing up a potential crush on Ms. Hanjol, which gets a skeptical reaction. The girl goes quiet, seemingly losing interest in the conversation entirely. Letting out a frustrated sigh, she clearly has something on her mind. Watching the training session unfold, she stays focused on the guy pulling up. His partner keeps barking instructions, pushing him to keep his back engaged. He begs for a break, but she's not letting him off the hook yet, so he keeps grinding out the reps while the team looks on. She watches the struggle closely, her expression turning unreadable. Then things get physical as she shoves him aside to take over, and she grabs the bar to show him how it's actually done. Sukyoung demonstrates the perfect form, keeping her back muscles engaged the whole time. She shows off the technique effortlessly, leaving Jinyang struggling to keep up. The guy is clearly having a rough time, and she calls him out on it. Watching her display such strength and ease makes everyone else stop and stare. Just then, Sunwoo wanders over, looking completely surprised to see the pair working out. Seeing her friend arrive, Sukyoung jumps down, acting like it's no big deal. Sunwoo wonders how he keeps running into these two in the middle of nowhere. They explain that she was just correcting his form because he was doing it wrong. A random chicken suddenly struts into the scene, which is honestly the weirdest part. Sunwoo is just as confused by the bird's presence as everyone else. Shaking it off, Sunwoo greets Jinyang, who is still catching his breath. The newcomer admits that pull-ups are impossible for her because of her anemia. Jinyang immediately apologizes for accidentally poking fun at her condition. Wanting to get him in on the action, Sukyoung offers to give Sunwoo a boost. She tells Jinyang to handle the counting while they get the setup ready. Sunwoo reaches up to the bar, feeling a little nervous about the whole thing. Even with a helping hand, the exercise proves to be a real challenge for her. She focuses intently, trying to muster up the strength for just one rep. Watching from the side, Jinyang keeps his eyes locked on her progress, but his face tells the whole story and he can't help but be impressed. Sukyoung is clearly struggling under the weight of the bar, and she snaps at Sunwoo to actually focus on pulling his weight. He tries to help, but the tension is getting too high. A moment of heavy silence passes between them mid-lift. Sunwoo stares blankly, wondering why she brought up that weird chicken incident. She gets so distracted by his comment that her grip slips. Everything falls apart in an instant as they lose their balance. Both of them go crashing onto the ground in a heap. Sunwoo turns around, completely baffled by the sudden chaos behind him. He looks down to find the two girls tangled on the pavement, pointing out that her anemia is clearly acting up again. Sukyoung quickly snaps back that her health is not the actual problem. She blames the whole mess on him zoning out while they worked out, and Sunwoo admits he lost his cool because of her lack of focus. Suddenly, he snaps and playfully swings her into the air. Realizing he went too far, he immediately starts apologizing to her. The sun begins to set as they finally wrap up their day. Walking home together, the intensity of the workout finally fades away. Sunwoo complains about being exhausted despite doing practically nothing at all. He suggests learning some better techniques from Sukyoung next time. Reflecting on the day, he realizes his strategy knowledge remains pretty limited. But hanging out with Sukyoung was a win, so he calls it a day. The two part ways at the intersection, heading off in different directions. Sunwoo waves goodbye but notices Sukyoung hesitating like she has something more to say. Asking if she needs anything, he waits for her to speak her mind. She just shakes it off, leaving him confused as to what that was about. A final smile from her and she turns around to walk away. With a quick goodbye, they both continue their separate paths home. Left alone, he sighs, clearly still puzzled by the awkward interaction. Jason notices his friend's frustration and asks why he's letting out such a heavy breath. Admitting he's no expert on the female heart, Jason offers his take. He flatly tells Sunwoo that he definitely gave her the wrong answer back there. Confused, the kid asks for clarification, but Jason just tells him to think it over. Getting roasted for his bad judgment, he demands an explanation for his social failure. Meanwhile, Sukyoung jumps in surprise as a stray rooster suddenly starts tailing her. It was a dark, quiet night when she decided to head to the campus rooftop. She figured the late hour meant the place would be completely deserted and peaceful. Keeping to herself, she starts listening to some music while enjoying the empty space. That calm atmosphere is broken when a piano melody suddenly drifts through the air. She realizes the sound is coming from the music room and wonders who is playing. The music hits differently and sends a total shiver down her spine. She is genuinely impressed by the talent but cannot help feeling a bit spooked. Suddenly, her classmates show up looking like they have seen a ghost themselves. Everyone's confused why she is framing this like some kind of jump scare horror movie. Even the big guy is acting like a total coward over the whole situation. Curious about the mystery pianist, she asks the group if they have any lids. They look at her like she is living under a rock for not knowing the school legend. It turns out there is a persistent rumor about a resident music room ghost. Legend has it a girl used to practice piano there every single night. Then one day while she was playing, she unexpectedly died right there. Apparently it was a freak accident involving a piece of candy, which sounds pretty bizarre. Since then, the piano supposedly plays itself whenever the room is completely empty. So the group concludes that the music they just heard was definitely paranormal. She is left looking completely stunned by the sudden turn toward the supernatural, trying to process if that story is actually supposed to be scary or what. It turns out her friend is having a total meltdown over the ghost talk. Poor guy is visibly trembling, proving he is absolutely terrified of anything spooky. Seeing him shake like a leaf is honestly kind of hilarious to everyone else. Just as the mood gets weird, a teacher walks up to interrupt their little meeting. She demands they drop the ghost talk and help her out in the staff room immediately. The group heads toward the staff room as instructed, leaving the ghost talk behind. Someone calls out Jinyoung to ask if the ghost story was actually legitimate. He admits it was a total fabrication, just a prank to see people freak out. Sunwoo is clearly terrified by the lie, but Jinyoung just seems proud of his performance. A moment of silence passes as the reality of the prank sinks in. She's not having any of it and calls him out for being an absolute menace. Night has fallen over the campus while everyone finishes up their work. Grading tests finally wraps up and the pair walks through the hallway together. Sunwoo is clearly out of it and not acting like her usual self. Concerned, he checks in on her because she looks like she is about to collapse. She tries to brush it off with a laugh, but it's not really convincing anyone. He wonders if the ridiculous ghost story from earlier is actually getting to her. She denies it immediately, even while physically hitting him to prove she is not scared. Despite her protests, she can't stop shaking while reciting the details of the story. The two of them stand there, caught in the awkward tension of the late hour. Suddenly, a faint melody starts drifting through the quiet school building. He recognizes the sound coming from the music room and stops in his tracks. They both realize the music matches the ghost story perfectly, which is a major red flag. He tries to rationalize it as just another student practicing late, but he's clearly doubting himself. A dark, unidentifiable figure appears at the end of the hall, cutting their conversation short. A mysterious silhouette drifts down the hallway, leaving everyone completely baffled. Sunwoo is clearly out late and his companion is already losing her cool. Her trembling suggests she is definitely not handling this encounter very well. The shadowy figure starts closing the distance and it is definitely not stopping. Pure panic erupts as she lets out a scream and makes a run for it. The legend of the girl who choked on candy is making a comeback tonight. Sunwoo tries to keep up, but she is already bolting down the stairs. Even the ghost seems confused by their sudden and chaotic exit. It turns out the apparition is just a classmate who is now left behind. She wonders if she really looks like a ghost to everyone else. A moment of insecurity settles in as she contemplates her late-night appearance. Outside, the night sky looms over the school while the chaos continues. Sunwoo finally makes it down, only to faceplant right on the pavement. The fall clearly leaves him dazed and nursing a fresh injury. She rushes over to check on him, wondering what exactly went wrong. It turns out the stairs were just too much for his current state. They realize the ghost was probably just a trick of the darkness. The adrenaline fades, leaving them to reflect on the silly campfire story. Their relief is cut short by the sound of a piano echoing again. Another mystery begins, making ghost rumors feel a lot more real than before. Our guy Jumin is internally panicking, trying to figure out how to comfort a clearly terrified Sunwoo. Then Jason rolls up in a vampire costume, acting like this is the perfect opportunity for romance. He points out that this is actually a golden chance for the two of them to get closer. Jason starts rambling about how fear is the ultimate wingman for sparking a connection between a guy and a girl. Sunwoo reaches out, her hand trembling as she grabs onto Jumin's suit for support. He freezes up, completely caught off guard by the sudden physical contact. She lets out a soft sound, her nerves clearly getting the better of her in the moment. Admitting that the whole situation is actually pretty scary, she stays close to him. Jumin immediately starts overthinking the situation, his mind jumping to a specific psychological term. He recognizes this as the classic suspension bridge effect in action. Recalling the concept, he knows it is all about misattributing fear to romantic attraction. It is the theory that a dangerous environment makes you feel drawn to whoever is standing right next to you. But honestly, pulling off a romantic play while a bright, cheerful piano tune blasts in the background feels impossible. Sunwoo's expression softens instantly, and it is obvious she is not even scared anymore. She starts laughing, pointing out that the ghost they were worried about is actually just playing the piano. The beat switches to a waltz, and Jumin is surprised by how well she knows her rhythm. She mentions taking ballroom dance lessons as a kid, which is why the tempo feels so familiar. Apparently, she and Jumin were actually dance partners back in the day, though she was always the one starting fights. When he asks if she still dances, she admits she quit to focus on art and manage her anemia. She then drops the bombshell that Jumin was actually a total dance prodigy back then, leaving him completely stunned. Sunwoo just can't visualize that kind of past for the guy. He admits that ballroom dancing feels like a completely different world to him. Sukyoung hums in thought, noting that it's been ages since she actually did any. Deciding to set the mood, she insists on some background music for their impromptu lesson. She suddenly demands he hold out his hand, leaving him caught off guard. Sunwoo hesitates but finally reaches out as she urges him to just go for it. Their hands lock together and the practice officially begins. She pulls him into position, ready to show him the ropes. As they start to turn, things go south almost immediately. A stray foot lands hard on his and the pain is instant. Sunwoo yelps, accidentally dragging her down with him in the process. Sukyoung apologizes profusely, blaming her lingering leg injury for the clumsy stumble. He shakes it off and suggests they just try it again. She spins him around, but his coordination is clearly not there. He loses his footing entirely and takes a clumsy tumble. She can't help but laugh at his complete lack of rhythm. Trying to play it cool, she brushes off the mess up with a grin. Sunwoo is clearly doubting this, but she insists they keep going. She adds a playful threat that if he steps on her again, she is taking him down. With a laugh, she decides to just teach him properly from the ground up. Sunwoo leans into the joke with a playful bow, completely committing to the bit. Jinyang just stares back, genuinely caught off guard by his sudden dramatic flair. Finding the whole display surprisingly charming rather than just weird, she lets out a soft laugh. So she decides to play along, formally accepting the offer to be in his care too. It's a moment of playful connection, but her thoughts immediately drift to the local urban legend. Everyone's been spooked by the so-called music room ghost, a mystery player haunting the school halls. That strange, recurring melody had everyone convinced there was a literal phantom lurking in the dark. Though for the guy currently sipping wine, the tune has started to feel less like a haunting. It's shifted into something more like a gift, a secret soundtrack to their blossoming friendship. As the night settles over the campus, the two of them just keep walking and talking. Bringing up his hobbies, she wonders if he's still keeping up with his art. Confirming he has not quit, he admits he still spends time at the drawing board. She jumps on the chance to ask for a favor, requesting a sketch of a super buff guy. Taken aback by the specific request, he hesitates but eventually agrees to give it a shot. It's a bit of a surprise for her, realizing there's a whole side to him she had not considered. Meanwhile, Sunwoo is lost in his own head, trying to recall a forgotten ambition of his own. The quiet moment breaks when Jinyang suddenly announces she needs to head to the restroom. He's instantly concerned, asking if she's really okay heading off into the dark alone. She brushes off his worry, but he can't help feeling that something is just off. He remembers how terrified she was earlier, making her sudden confidence feel completely out of character. Maybe she has finally started getting comfortable with the fear. Jason thinks something feels off about the whole situation. He asks if the guy remembers their suspension bridge effect plan. A new theory suggests that the plan is already working. Could it be that the effect has been active the entire time? She pauses to apply lipstick while brushing off the music room ghost rumors. Laughing it off, she insists that ghosts are not actually real. Complaining about a sore foot, she jokingly calls out the guy for being clumsy. The music room remains the site of their late-night meeting. Someone finally signals that it is time to stop playing the piano. Pointing out the late hour, she tells the pianist to pack up and go home. Yo-jin sits alone at the keys, lost in her own world. She seems startled when her concentration is suddenly broken. Asking for just one more piece, she is interrupted by a voice from the doorway. Quickly apologizing, she agrees to call it a night and head out.